You're standing in your backyard on a beautiful afternoon, admiring the flowers you've carefully planted along the fence line. The garden looks vibrant and healthy. Everything seems perfect. Then you notice something unusual. A few of your prized plants are starting to wilt despite regular watering. The leaves are turning yellow, developing strange spots, or simply dropping off. You check the soil, adjust your watering schedule, maybe even add fertilizer. But nothing seems to help. The problem keeps getting worse. Here's what many gardeners don't realize. Sometimes the issue isn't what you're doing wrong, it's what you're planting next to each other. Certain plant combinations create conditions that lead to disease, stunted growth, or complete failure. Without knowing it, you might be setting up your garden for problems from the very beginning. Today we're going to explore 7 plant combinations you should absolutely avoid if you want a thriving, healthy garden. This isn't about complicated science, it's about understanding simple relationships that can make or break your growing season. First, let's talk about tomatoes and brassicas. This is one of the most common mistakes gardeners make, especially beginners who are excited to grow as many vegetables as possible in limited space. Tomatoes are beloved for their versatility and flavor. Brassicas, like cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and Brussels sprouts, are nutritional powerhouses that many gardeners want in their plots. But when you plant them together, you're creating a competitive nightmare. These plants have fundamentally different needs that directly conflict with each other. Tomatoes are heavy feeders that require rich, nutrient-dense soil with plenty of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. They also need consistent warmth and full sun exposure to produce fruit. Brassicas, on the other hand, prefer cooler temperatures and moderate nutrient levels. When forced to share space, tomatoes aggressively deplete the soil of nutrients that brassicas need for proper leaf and head development. The tomatoes essentially starve out their neighbors. But the problem doesn't stop there. Both plant families attract specific pests that can easily jump between them. Tomato hornworms, aphids, and whiteflies that target tomatoes will readily move to nearby brassicas. Similarly, cabbage worms and flea beetles that prefer brassicas can damage young tomato plants. You end up with a concentrated pest problem that's much harder to control than if the plants were separated. Even more concerning is disease transmission. Tomatoes are susceptible to various fungal infections that thrive in the warm, humid conditions they prefer. These same conditions can encourage rot and mildew on brassicas, which naturally prefer drier, cooler environments. When planted together, you create a microclimate where diseases spread rapidly between both plant types. The solution is simple. Keep them completely separate. Plant tomatoes in the warmest, sunniest part of your garden with plenty of space between plants. Place brassicas in areas that receive some afternoon shade, especially in warmer climates, and ensure they have their own dedicated soil preparation. Now let's discuss fennel, which is often called the loneliest plant in the garden for good reason. Fennel is beautiful, aromatic, and useful in the kitchen. It produces delicate, feathery foliage and attractive yellow flowers that many gardeners find appealing. But here's the problem. Fennel releases chemical compounds through its roots that actively inhibit the growth of nearly every plant around it. This process, called allelopathy, makes fennel one of the most aggressive plants you can introduce to a garden bed. The chemicals fennel produces don't just slow down nearby plants, they can completely stunt or kill them. Vegetables like tomatoes, beans, peppers, eggplant, and cucumbers suffer dramatically when planted near fennel. Their growth slows, leaves turn pale, and fruit production drops significantly or stops entirely. Even herbs that typically thrive in similar conditions, such as coriander, dill, and caraway, struggle when fennel is nearby. The effect is so pronounced that many experienced gardeners refuse to plant fennel anywhere near their main vegetable beds. What makes fennel particularly troublesome is how far its influence extends. The inhibitory chemicals don't stay confined to the immediate root zone. They spread through the soil over time, affecting plants several feet away. A single fennel plant can impact an area much larger than its visible footprint. Many gardeners only discover this after noticing that an entire section of their garden is underperforming, and they eventually trace the problem back to fennel planted months earlier. If you want to grow fennel, and it does have its uses, plant it in complete isolation. Give it its own container, or dedicate a separate garden bed far from other vegetables and herbs. Treat it like a quarantine plant that cannot be trusted near anything you care about. The third combination to avoid is cucumbers and aromatic herbs, particularly sage and rosemary. This surprises many people because herbs are often recommended as companion plants. But not all herbs play well with vegetables, and this pairing demonstrates why you need to be selective. Cucumbers thrive in warm, consistently moist soil with good drainage. They're vigorous growers that spread rapidly and produce abundant fruit when conditions are right. They prefer neutral to slightly acidic soil and benefit from regular feeding throughout the growing season. Sage and rosemary, however, are Mediterranean herbs adapted to completely different conditions. They prefer dry, well-drained soil with minimal water. They thrive in alkaline conditions and actually perform worse when given rich, heavily fertilized soil. These fundamental differences create an impossible situation. If you water enough to keep cucumbers happy, you'll overwater the herbs, leading to root rot and fungal problems. If you hold back water to suit the herbs, your cucumbers will wilt, produce bitter fruit, or fail to develop properly. There's no middle ground that satisfies both plants. Beyond water requirements, these aromatic herbs release strong oils and compounds that cucumbers find inhibitory. The scent that makes sage and rosemary valuable in cooking actually interferes with cucumber growth and can affect the flavor of the fruit. Cucumbers grown near these herbs often taste slightly off or develop more slowly than expected. The leaves may appear healthy, but fruit production remains disappointingly low. Many gardeners waste an entire season wondering why their cucumber vines produce lots of foliage but very few cucumbers, never realizing the aromatic herbs planted nearby are the culprit. Keep cucumbers in their own space with consistent moisture and neutral soil. Plant sage and rosemary in dry, sunny locations far from water-loving vegetables. Fourth on the list is potatoes planted alongside tomatoes, peppers, or eggplants. This might seem strange since these plants are all members of the nightshade family and appear similar. But that family connection is precisely the problem. When you group nightshades together, you create a concentrated target for diseases and pests that specialize in attacking this plant family. Late blight, early blight, and verticillium wilt are devastating fungal diseases that affect all nightshades. When potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants share garden space, these diseases spread rapidly from plant to plant. A single infected potato plant can wipe out nearby tomatoes within days under the right conditions. The spores travel easily through air and water, moving between plants with no barriers to slow them down. Colorado potato beetles, aphids, and flea beetles that target one nightshade will readily attack others. Instead of dealing with isolated pest pressure, you create a buffet situation where insects can move freely between their favorite food sources. The infestation builds quickly and becomes much harder to control. What makes this particularly frustrating is that these plants also compete directly for the same nutrients. Potatoes are aggressive feeders that extract large amounts of potassium from the soil. Tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants need that same potassium for fruit development. When planted together, they deplete the soil rapidly, leading to deficiencies that show up as yellowing leaves, poor fruit set, and weak overall growth. Even with fertilization, it's difficult to keep up with their combined demands. The root systems also interfere with each other. Potato tubers develop underground and spread outward, often disrupting the roots of nearby tomato or pepper plants. This physical competition adds stress and reduces productivity across all the plants involved. Separate your nightshades completely, plant potatoes in one area, tomatoes in another, and peppers and eggplants in a third location if possible. Rotate these locations each year to prevent disease buildup in the soil. The fifth problematic pairing is beans planted with onions, garlic, or other alliums. This combination fails for reasons that aren't immediately obvious but become clear once you understand how these plants function. Beans are legumes with a special ability. They form symbiotic relationships with bacteria in the soil that convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form plants can use. This process, called nitrogen fixation, is one of the main reasons gardeners plant beans. They actually improve soil fertility as they grow. Onions and garlic, however, release sulfur compounds through their roots. These compounds have natural antimicrobial properties, which is why alliums resist many diseases and pests. but those same antimicrobial effects kill or severely inhibit the beneficial bacteria that beans depend on for nitrogen fixation. When beans are planted near onions or garlic, they lose their primary advantage. Without active nitrogen fixation, beans grow poorly, produce fewer pods, and contribute nothing to soil improvement. The plants survive but perform far below their potential. You end up with weak, unproductive bean plants and no understanding of why they're struggling. The problem intensifies over time. As onions and garlic mature, they release more sulfur compounds. The inhibitory effect becomes stronger as the season progresses. Beans planted early in the season near young allium plants might start reasonably well, then mysteriously decline as everything matures. Gardeners often misdiagnose this as a watering issue or nutrient deficiency, never suspecting the real cause. Additionally, beans and alliums have different watering needs that create practical conflicts. Beans prefer consistent moisture throughout their growing season. Onions and garlic need moisture during early growth, but require dry conditions as they approach maturity to prevent rot and encourage proper bulb formation. You can't satisfy both requirements in the same space. Keep beans away from all alliums. Plant them in separate beds where their nitrogen-fixing abilities can benefit other vegetables like corn, squash, or lettuce that actually appreciate the extra nitrogen beans provide. The sixth combination to avoid is carrots and dill planted together. This seems counterintuitive because dill is often recommended as a companion plant for many vegetables. But with carrots, the relationship is more complicated and potentially harmful. Young dill plants can provide minor benefits to carrots by attracting beneficial insects. But as dill matures and begins to flower, it becomes a serious problem. Mature dill produces allelopathic compounds that inhibit carrot root development. Since the entire point of growing carrots is to produce large, well-formed roots, anything that interferes with root growth defeats the purpose. Carrots planted near flowering dill often produce stunted, deformed, or forked roots that are difficult to harvest and unpleasant to eat. The carrots might look healthy above ground with lush green foliage, but underground they're failing to develop properly. Many gardeners only discover this after pulling up disappointing, misshapen carrots at harvest time. There's also a pest issue. Both carrots and dill attract carrot rust flies and parsley worms. When planted together, you concentrate these pests in one area, making damage more severe. The insects move easily between plants, reproducing rapidly, and building up populations that overwhelm your ability to control them. What starts as minor leaf damage quickly escalates to serious infestation affecting both crops. The timing problem is equally important. Dill matures and goes to seed faster than carrots reach harvest size. Once dill flowers, it puts energy into seed production and begins to decline. The dying plant material can harbor diseases and pests that transfer to the still growing carrots nearby. If you want to grow both plants, keep them in completely different areas of the garden. Plant dill where it can go to seed without affecting root vegetables. Keep your carrot bed free from mature flowering herbs of any kind. Finally, let's talk about plants from the Brassica family planted densely together. This includes cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, and kohlrabi. While these plants aren't incompatible in the same way as previous examples, planting them too close together or in concentrated groups creates serious problems that many gardeners overlook. All brassicas are targeted by the same pests: cabbage worms, cabbage loopers, flea beetles, and aphids that specialize in brassicas will devastate a concentrated planting. When you group these plants together, you're essentially creating a pest paradise where insects can feed, reproduce, and spread without ever needing to leave. The infestation builds exponentially. A few cabbage worms can turn into hundreds within weeks when they have unlimited food sources right next to each other. Disease is an even bigger concern. Clubroot, black rot, and downy mildew spread rapidly through dense brassica plantings. These diseases persist in soil for years, making it nearly impossible to grow healthy brassicas in that location again. Once clubroot establishes itself in a concentrated brassica bed, the area becomes unusable for any member of this plant family for up to 7 years. The financial and productivity loss is significant. Brassicas also compete intensely with each other for nutrients. They're all heavy feeders that extract similar nutrients from the same soil depth. When planted close together, They quickly exhaust the soil, leading to yellowing leaves, stunted growth, and poor head formation. Even with heavy fertilization, densely planted brassicas struggle because their root systems physically interfere with each other, limiting each plant's access to water and nutrients. The solution is spacing and rotation. Give each brassica plant plenty of room to grow. Interplant them with non-brassica vegetables like lettuce, beets, or radishes. Spread them throughout the garden rather than grouping them together. This strategy reduces pest concentration, limits disease transmission, and allows each plant to access adequate resources. Rotate brassicas to different garden locations each year to prevent soil depletion and disease buildup. Gardening is more than just scattering seeds in the dirt and hoping for the best. It is an art of arrangement and an understanding of the silent relationships happening beneath the soil. As we've seen, even the healthiest plants can wither if they are forced to live next to the wrong neighbors. I hope these insights help clear up those mysterious yellowing leaves and stunted growth in your backyard, replacing them with vibrant greenery and a bountiful harvest. Keep a close eye on your garden every day. Your plants always have a way of telling you exactly what they need. Thank you for watching. If you found this information helpful, please hit the subscribe button and share your own gardening experiences in the comments below. Happy growing!